Max Keiser, and this is On the Edge. Time now. Well, first of all, let me point something out here. Look what I'm holding in my hand. This is the latest edition of the Trends Journal. This is the Bible that people refer to if they want to know what's going to be happening next month, next year, and for the next 10 years. Who is the editor of the Trends Journal? Why, it's Gerald Celente. Welcome back to On the Edge, Gerald.
Oh, thanks for having me on, Max. Always great being on with you.
What's happening from Cairo to Ohio? The world is engaged in a global, seemingly a global insurrection. Tell us, you predicted this a couple of years ago. You talked about the conditions that led to the uprisings in places around the world. It's an economic problem, and the dictators went too far, etc. Tell us a little bit about how you see this situation developing in the Mideast and around the world, developing from here.
When you look back at our Autumn Trends Journal, the headline was, Off with Their Heads 2.0. You can see it coming. You know, as a Bronx guy, one of my sayings is that when people lose everything and have nothing left to lose, they lose it. They have this white shoe boy language. They call it austerity measures. Isn't that a proper term? What's an austerity measure? Well, if you're Irish, we're going to cut the minimum wage 12%. You're making nothing already. How about making a lot less more? And then what we're going to do is we're going to increase the service fees on everything while we cut services. Oh, one other thing. We're going to also cut back pensions and benefits, and we're going to increase the retirement age until after you die. And we're going to tax you across the board. It's for your own good because we have to save the banks. They can't get a haircut. The bondholders, the people who made bad bets. So all of it's going to be on your shoulders. Then after we wrote this, we saw what happened in the UK. They raised tuition prices 200% on university students. Not only do they have these degrees in worthlessness, now it's going to cost them 200% more to get one. So when you're looking at the facts, Max, here's the deal. You're living at home with your mother and father. You're in your late 20s. You have no future ahead of you. You can't get a job. And the people at the top of the pyramid are raking in all the dough. You think they're angry. So what we wrote before this happened was, students and youth of the world unite. We said the next revolution would be YouTubed, it would be Facebooked, and it would be Twittered. What we're seeing, Max, isn't about Tunisia or Egypt or Bahrain or Libya. It's about the beginning of the great war of the 21st century. It's all about money, has nothing to do with democracy, autocracy, plutocracy. It has to do with the bottom line. And the bottom line is that the pigs, the money junkies at the top, they can't get enough and they don't want to send anything down. So my other saying is, when the money stops flowing to Main Street, the blood starts flowing on the streets.
Right. Okay. Now, before the G20 meeting this year that just ended a couple of weeks ago, an idea was being floated. Two ideas were being floated. One was that to restart this global Ponzi scheme, this credit neoliberal model, it would be necessary to create some kind of new lending facility of $100 trillion, number one. Number two, Robert Zoellick of the World Bank floated the idea of bringing back to maybe a global currency or a new currency backed in part by gold. Can you talk about, you mentioned that it all comes down to money. These are 2 points that relate to this money question. It's the $100 trillion new credit facility. Where did that come from? Where is that going? Is there a new global currency coming? And what is gold's role in this, if any?
Well, gold has a huge role in it. And as you well know, we had forecast the bottom of gold in 2001. It's a very simple formula. The more digital money they kept printing, the higher the price of gold goes. And that's what's going on now. As you well know, one of the major factors behind all these commodity price rises are the devaluation of the dollar. And then you look what the European Union has done. They're playing the same Fed game. What have they, they break every law that they make. They broke the Maastricht Treaty, the Lisbon agreements. You're not supposed to bail out failing nations or buy up bad debt from bad bets made by banks and bondholders. And they've done it. So they're flooding the world with this cheap currency. And now you're hearing Sarkozy, you're hearing Merkel, you're hearing Hu from China. They're all talking about a new world currency and pulling away from the dollar. Let's put this together, Max, as we move forward. The crash of 1929 equal the panic of '08. The Great Depression equaled the Great Recession. The only reason we haven't gone fast into the Depression is because, again, of these trillions and trillions of dollars being printed by the central banks in Europe and the U.S. And then you put the next equation, the one you just brought into it. Currency wars, crash, depression, currency wars, and now trade wars. Argentina, Brazil, they're all talking about it, putting up barriers to stop the free flow of cheap Chinese and other goods from coming in and undermining their market. Crash, depression, currency war, trade war, hot war. And that's what we're looking at now. What's going on, they say, you know how they teach you the stupid junk in school? World War I began because the Archduke Ferdinand was assassinated at Sarajevo. No, it didn't. It was the breakdown of the systems. And what you're seeing now are brush fires. Brush fire in Tunisia, brush fire in Yemen, brush fire in Libya, brush fire in Egypt, and now it's going to move to Europe. Europe is next. Greece, Portugal, Spain, Ireland, UK. We are on the doorstep of the first great war of the 21st century.
Okay, you mentioned World War I, and of course, preceding World War I was a great period of globalization, and then that globalization, the cheap money that fueled it ended, and that resulted, you could say, in this global conflict. Similarly, in 2007, 2008, you had what's called peak credit. Credit dried up and has caused tremendous strains around the world, and it's flaring up in these revolutions and revolts. What do you make of this, Gerald Celente? I'm looking over at Paul Farrell, who's a columnist at MarketWatch, which of course is a Dow Jones-owned website. He recently wrote an editorial saying that the Fed Director Bernanke is a dictator that needs to be toppled. Now, that's pretty strong language coming from mainstream American press, characterizing the Fed chairman as a dictator that needs to be toppled, presumably like we're seeing regimes change in other countries. Is this a breakthrough in terms of the rhetoric in the U.S.? It seems like things are heating up in the U.S.
It is a breakthrough, and things are heating up. As you pointed out, what's going on in Ohio, what's going on in Wisconsin. The people are taking to the streets. They're wise to the game. People didn't even know what the Federal Reserve was 5 years ago. And now you can talk to many people and they're angry about what's going on. And so when you hear it from MarketWatch and Ron Paul also growing in stature and getting more and more airtime coming out against the Fed, and even the mainstream business media on TV are coming out against Bernanke, that these are failed policies. And when you look at them, Max, let's look at what they're coming up with, the schemes from D.C. They're coming up with, they talk about we're going to lower taxes. We have to cut spending. We have to put more stimulus in. These are the three cornerstones that they keep talking about. They've tried them all. They've tried them all and they've all failed. So what do they keep doing? They keep becoming emboldened by their failures. It's like the military. They keep losing these wars, and it's the same thing they say all the time. Progress is being made. More men, more money, more time. Matter of fact, I just heard the president's, this is a great one. Go on YouTube and watch it. It's a laugh. It was on February 17th, the White House press conference. They have a new guy. His name is Carney. And it's a great name for him because Carney is a carnival worker. And this guy's great, boy. But he's coming out with and saying that Obama's stimulus program is working. And one of the reporters said, but wait, you said that according to the charts that with the stimulus program, we'd have 7% unemployment now. And you know what the guy said? He doesn't want to relitigate history. Well, we're really at about 22% unemployment when you look at John Williams' stats. So when you look at the lies that are being told and the Bernanke failures, yeah, it's a dictator that they want to topple. But more important, Max, the merger of state and corporate powers is called fascism. And that's what's really going on in America. Because are they really starting to clamp down? They know that things are getting out of control, and they're really going to try to stop it before it spreads.
All right, Gerald Celente, I'm reading the news coming out of Wisconsin and Ohio. There's protests in the street. There are union members. They're labor, as part of the labor force. Now, here's the question. The way the media is portraying these people is as pesky union members and pesky laborers that don't get the whole post-Reagan neoliberal revolution. Now, here's the question I want to ask, and maybe you can help square the circle for these people. To me, and I would think you would agree, that what these people are experiencing in Ohio and Wisconsin is not the problems that are regional and specific to their labor issues with their local municipalities and governments, but it's part of a global problem where the banks have disenfranchised countries and communities around the world. But how do you get the people in Wisconsin and Ohio to understand that their plight is pari passu, if you will, to use a banking term, with the revolutionaries in Egypt and the revolutionaries in Tunisia? How do you get them to understand that they're all on the same side against the bankers?
I think they're starting to understand it. You mentioned the media. How about calling them the press? How about calling the press the Presstitutes? Because that's what they are. I just mentioned this guy, Carney, who's now the mouthpiece for the administration. Hey, where did he come from? Geez, Time Magazine. And who's his wife? Oh, Claire Shipman with ABC. It's the same school. So you're not going to get it through the media. It's going to go through Journalism 2.0. And Journalism 2.0 is who you are, who I am, who others are that are not part of the mainstream media. And the people are starting to understand it. Even the people that have been disconnected are putting the pieces together because they know it's about the bottom line. But here's where the difficulty comes in. As these revolutions start to take place, what they then do is they find the new communist. And the new communist today is the Muslims. So what they're doing is they're trying to shift it from being a bread and butter issue to a religious issue. It's that stupid saying that they say all the time. You know, all wars begin because of religions. No, they don't. They begin over money. It's all about money. But to answer your question, they are putting it together. All things are connected. Workers of the World Unite 2.0. That was our trend forecast, as you mentioned, a couple of years ago.
Let me move on to the kind of the state of health care in America for a second here. Dick Cheney in 2005, he got Halliburton completely exempted from the Clean Water Act. And as a result, you have this flammable tap water around in the country due to the fracking. Now, the FDA recently approved unregulated planting of genetically modified alfalfa seeds. One of the very first actions of the new Republican Congress is an attempt to get rid of the Clean Air Act. So the entire environment, which is the source of the economy, is being destroyed from within. The very foundation is being destroyed. How come people don't understand that if you destroy the ecology and the environment, you're destroying the economy? There's no self-interest in that, correct?
Correct. And by the way, don't only blame the Republicans. Look at Obama's new budget. They're cutting about 30% out of the EPA. And look at the people in this country. They're, junk food fattened and prescription drug addicted. They don't know what's going on. And the fracking, by the way, that's happening right where we are, up in Kingston, New York, right north of us. And there are loads of protests going on and trying to stop it. At the same time, they're running these ads on TV, the industry, about how wonderful it is for all of us, the jobs it's going to create, and how it's going to lower energy costs, and of course, make us free from Mideast oil. So, the people, again, they're only thinking short term. Is there a job in it for me? And do I have to pay less for fuel? Let's remember, this is not a society that is really that bright on not only local issues or national issues, but they don't have a clue for the most part of what's going on globally. So the advertisements and the lure of jobs and cheap energy are probably more of a swaying point than it's killing you. Because if they cared about their own health, then they would care about the environment. So if they don't care about themselves, what are they going to care about the environment?
Right. So it's an attack on the individual's ability to even ascertain what their self-interest is. And once you destroy that, you can destroy everything else. So you talk about energy. So let's go back to the Mideast for a second. All these revolutions happening in the region, all this democracy breaking out. It seems like the odd man out here would be Israel. Is that true? And if so, what's going to happen now in Israel going forward in their relationship with their neighbors?
Well, we're hearing from reports from Lebanon that Israel may invade Lebanon. And we're hearing from the head of Hezbollah saying that if such a invasion happens, the Lebanese are going to invade Israel. And we're also hearing this noise from Israel about an Iranian ship going through a warship going through the Suez Canal. What's the big deal? One Iranian warship going through the Suez Canal? What do they have? The Fifth Fleet of the United States in Bahrain? So what they're doing is they're trumpeting it up because Israel's going to be losing support in the long term as these monarchies and dictatorships not are only overthrown, but there's so much flux in the Middle East that they're not going to be worrying about Israel anymore. They're going to be worrying about their own hometown, whether it's in Egypt, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, or anywhere else. So we believe that there's going to be more and more flare-ups coming out of Israel, whether it has to do with Gaza, the West Bank, more settlements, or a possible incursion into Lebanon. And of course, there's always that boogeyman, Iran. You got to stop Iran. That's going to be the whole thing. Matter of fact, if you want to know about hypocrisy, I think it's spelled Hillary Clinton. She just came out about how terrible the regime is in Iran and how they wouldn't allow internet freedom or the people to protest, as the United States was supporting Mubarak for 30 years and over $40 billion worth of U.S. money as they shut down the internet, as they supported a dictatorship. So rather than her addressing that, she's throwing it back over to Iran. So that's what we're looking at now, Max. The Middle East once again.
Right. Well, okay. So in the region, you've got the three players, if you will. You've got Saudi Arabia and Iran, and you've got Israel. The triangle, the Bermuda Triangle of foreign policy facoctinous, if you will, to coin a term. So going forward, Gerald Celente, Trends Institute, master prognosticator, seer of all things, who's going to be the loser out of those three? Saudi Arabia, Iran, Israel. Who's got the weakest hand at the global geopolitical poker table?
I would say in the long run, it's going to be Israel. They're surrounded, and and again, I'm not saying this. People are going to call me an anti-Semite because they don't like what I'm saying. But in the long term, they're the odd man out, because there's going to be a point when the interests aren't going to be in the Middle East, in the sense that we can see an alternative energy coming within a decade that is going to start having less and less importance on oil, whether it's coming from these low energy nuclear reactions or other kinds of alternative energies. And the fact is, these countries, as I mentioned, whether it's Egypt, Libya, Algeria, you name the Turkey, they're going to have their own problems. There are not going to be a lot of people caring about Israel in the future, as we see it. We think they're going to take the biggest hit because these other countries, they're going to also be in civil war. So we're going to see civil war to regional war to the Great War.
Right, so maybe it's time to short the shekel. So, Gerald Celente, we've got about a minute left, and I just want to remind people, they see you on TV, they see you all over the news. Maybe they don't know that Gerald Celente, who is he? He's the man behind the Trends Journal, which comes out, I think, on a quarterly basis, and it really has become now in the last couple of years. It's been around for 20 years. What do you think? You mentioned the alternative energy space. Is that kind of the big theme going forward, Gerald?
Yes, it really is. That's the game changer, by the way, Max, in a lot of things. The economy as well. Go back to the 1990s. What got the U.S. out of the recession and a lot of the world? It was the Internet revolution. Our whole lives are different because it was a productive capacity. Products were made. They were invented, designed, manufactured, serviced. And we believe we're on the brink of an alternative energy breakthrough. But here are the holdups, by the way. One is in the United States. They're holding up patents that they don't want to get out because they're saying they don't meet scientific criteria. And the other is that there are companies that are buying out these scientists before they can bring the product to market. But if that happens, imagine you having your own energy producing unit the size of a hot water heater. You're off the grid. These things are being manufactured. The whole global game changes. Something like that could be a game changer.
All right, well, that's all the time we have for today, Gerald Celente. And this is a special 20-year anniversary issue. And to be competitive with the Sports Illustrated, there's actually a photo of Gerald wearing a bathing suit. So you don't want to miss this edition of Trends Journal. Gerald, thanks so much again for being on the edge.
Hey, thanks, Max.
All right, and that's going to do it for this edition of On the Edge. I want to thank my guest, Gerald Celente. You can catch all of his work at trendsjournal.com. If you want to send me an email, please do so at ontheedge on presstv.com. Until next time, this is Max Keiser saying bye, y'all.